a bad jobs report here or there is not the end of the world. They happen from time to time, and people freak out and people forget about it. However, the specific contours of this moment feel like a glimmer of a stranger, less comfortable future.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
Let's talk about these jobs numbers, folks. They are really bad, like scary bad. So the July job numbers, those weren't the big problem. The projection was like 110,000 new jobs, and the actual number was 73,000 new jobs. And so that came in a little under expectations, but it's not that big a deal ultimately. The big thing is that the previous 2 months' jobs numbers were revised down. And so June and May, the initial numbers were something like 110 or 150,000 jobs created. And now those have been revised down and saying that, no, there was actually like only 10,000 jobs created per month in each of those months. And so with that being the case, then, that's obviously a much bigger problem. There's been a lot of commentary on this on Twitter, and I got a couple of them. This one from Jamie Dupree. He has a chart with all of the numbers from the BLS since 2010. And he says if you throw out 2020, where there was obviously huge fluctuations in the job market, this is the weakest 3-month period of job growth since 2010. If you throw out COVID again, that is terrible news. Really concerning stuff there. Mike Conzal and Jamie Dupree, just so that you've got a little bit of context on who this guy is. He is reports on Congress, and he has a newsletter. Mike Conzal on Twitter. But, you don't have to trust the guy like he put out the chart directly from the BLS. So Mike Conzal is a senior director of policy and research at the Economic Security Project, former National Economic Council guy. And so he says that, the 73,000 jobs would be, concerning to begin with, but he kind of says what I just said, that the revisions were really, really bad. And there's been we'll talk a little bit about the fallout from the revisions here in a second, but he points out that negative revisions naturally occur at the end of recoveries / economic turning points from complexities of estimating business births, deaths, and seasonal adjustments. Okay, so we are at an economic turning point, I think, is his that's his judgment. And so negative revisions are not that uncommon in those kinds of things, right? And so he has some analysis about this, but one of the things that he talks about that's really crazy is that all of the job growth comes from education and health services. All of the job growth comes from education and health services, and manufacturing jobs are being lost at a comparable rate to federal jobs. The Trump administration is doging manufacturing workers. Really, really concerning stuff here. Just wild.
And I know you're going to expand on this in a second, but it is really remarkable that healthcare and education are floating it when those are two areas that are about to experience some real disruption, right, due to cuts from the federal government. So, buckle up.
He says one potential reason for the low job growth and speculative, more negative revisions is that job growth has been more concentrated in fewer industries in 2025. And so he's got this graph here that shows the percent of industries that are adding jobs. And if you look at, like, you know, for most of the time, it's been around like 60%. It kind of hovers around 60% in 2021 and 2022. It got up to 80% of industries adding jobs, which is wild. And now it's around 50% of industries adding jobs, right? So when you have growth being concentrated in a smaller number of industries, that obviously makes those kinds of estimations more difficult, right? And he also talks about how, you know, there's a question about why isn't the unemployment rate increasing? And that actually, if you account for the people who have, you know, the unemployment rate is calculated by taking the denominator is people who want to find a job, right? There are people who are not employed, but who are also not looking for work. And so they are not counted in the unemployment rate, and they're just counted towards the labor force participation rate, right? Well, the percent of people looking for work since April has decreased. Like, not insubstantially. And actually, if you account for that increase, if you say, like, okay, well, let's count the people who have left the workforce just since April or May in the unemployment rate, then the unemployment rate, rather than being like only 4.2 or 4.3%, kind of basically the same, it's actually up to 4.9%, which is very concerning. Very, very, very concerning.
Right. And just to reiterate, I mean, we haven't felt the impact yet of these cuts that are coming.
Right.
There are going to be more people in the federal government who lose their jobs. There's going to be more people in state and local government, conceivably, who will lose jobs. You know, healthcare is going to be significantly impacted. Education has already been impacted. So, you know, it's going to be interesting to see how this continues when you have sectors that are kind of floating the job numbers, and they are going to experience job losses in the coming months.
Joe Weisenthal is a reporter for Bloomberg, and he has some stuff in his Substack about this, about like digging into the numbers, and like the further that you dig into these numbers, the more scary it is. And so I just told you that like healthcare and education account for all the job gains. Without healthcare, the last 3 months of payroll gains look like negative 53,000 jobs in May, negative 45,000 jobs in June, and negative 300 jobs in July. So actually job loss if you don't include healthcare. And also, it's worth noting that like healthcare jobs are just increasing kind of mechanically because of the fact that, you know, people are getting older and they're needing more care. And so it's not really like, you know, indicative of the economy being better generally, right? It's just like kind of these things happen, and that's just what happens in an aging society. But the AI thing is going on. And yesterday alone, you know, the stock market has, you know, has been kind of, as all of this has been happening, has been kind of steady-ish. And yesterday alone, Meta added about $200 billion to its market cap. He says, generally speaking, the other big tech giants are more or less riding the same AI wave. It's been great for shareholders, and it's been great for some workers. But if you ignore this very small slice of elite AI talent, the labor market within tech does not look great. Microsoft has been another huge AI winner with its cloud business growing like crazy, and yet even they've been cutting jobs. Its CEO, Satya Nadella, posted a memo about how the pace of layoffs at his company has been, quote, weighing on him.
Oh, well, bless his heart.
Yeah, bless his heart. You gotta, you know, I mean, look, there's a bunch of people that are being laid off, and, you know, they are, you know, maybe going to become economically destitute, all that stuff, but you know, it's weighing on the CEO. So So Joe continues, so if you think about the current state of the U.S. economy, there's something vaguely futuristic about it. A very tiny handful of people getting generationally wealthy and powerful, a broad swath of people seeing their personal balance sheets improve because the stock market's been so hot, and then the only areas of actual widespread jobs growth being in areas tied to aging and health, much of which is sustained by widening deficit spending. What we're not seeing is any kind of general expansion in activity across the economy. A bad jobs report here or there is not the end of the world. They happen from time to time, and people freak out and people forget about it. However, the specific contours of this moment feel like a glimmer of a stranger, less comfortable future.
Hey, 5 seconds. Just wanted to say that this is only possible because of our donors. If you want to see more of this, then consider donating yourself at tvlr.fm/donate.
Yeah. Really concerning stuff. And so then there's been some attempt to try to spin this. And so E.J. Antoni, he's an economist for the Heritage Foundation. He says, despite a disappointing headline, this jobs report was the best July ever for employment among native-born Americans, up 2 million year over year, and annual growth 2.2 million faster among foreign-born workers. Native-born American employment is now 1.8 million above pre-pandemic level. Well, that's a little bit misleading. And Mike Conzal, who we previously talked about, he responded to this tweet and he said, look, even if this is the measure that you want to talk about, that you're concerned about, just improving conditions for native-born Americans, improving the amount of jobs for native-born Americans, right? And, there's lots of stuff that can contribute to things being better for native-born Americans. But, so look, even if that's the measure that you want to think about, July saw the highest unemployment rate and lowest prime age employment to population ratio for native-born workers in years. In years. And so he's got a graph where he shows, he's got two graphs, and he shows, like he said, the prime age labor force participation rate, which prime age is 25 to 54. And you can see that the prime age workforce participation rate peaked at like 82% or something like that in like 2023, 24. And right now it is 80.8%. 80.8% of people in the prime age workforce participation are working now. That is the lowest that it's been since 2022. Since 2022. All right, so that's concerning. Also, the highest unemployment rate. And remember, the unemployment rate, the denominator is only people who are looking for work, right? The unemployment rate right now among native-born American workers is 4.7%. The last time that it was that high was in 2021. And I don't know if you remember, but there was stuff happening in 2021.
A little more to the story than this fella betrays.
Yeah, really, really, really concerning jobs numbers. And so then, after the jobs numbers come out,
which also, like, the whole framing of, well, actually, native-born Americans are doing quite well. It's those immigrants that, right. That's where the job losses are happening, as if somehow that's disconnected from the rest of our community.
Right. Yeah, exactly. But yeah, so then the jobs numbers come out, and literally within hours, the Trump administration fires the Bureau of Labor Statistics, the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics, because they say she's a Biden appointee and she's trying to fudge the numbers and whatever. And in his social media post, he talks about how she did negative revisions under Biden to help Biden, and now she's doing negative revisions under Trump to hurt Trump. And it's all very weird. But she was not a political animal. She had spent years decades, over 20 years at the Bureau of Labor Statistics. This is a career civil servant dedicated to seeing their jobs be done and be done well. And so the president of the American Federation of Government Employees, Reverend Everett Kelly, Alabama native, put out a statement about it. AFGE is the largest federal employee union. He said President Trump's attack on the Bureau of Labor Statistics and his call to fire the longtime federal worker who leads the agency over today's publication of employment data is outrageous and irresponsible. The civil servants at BLS are not political actors. They are professionals committed to producing accurate, independent data regardless of who is in power. BLS Commissioner Erica McInterfer, I don't know, that's a crazy name, who Trump now wants to fire, has worked in the federal government for more than 2 decades under multiple administrations. Presidents don't get to blame career workers when their policies don't deliver. That's why America's civil servants collect and report this data, to give the American people the truth, not to make sure the president looks good. AFGE stands with BLS workers and all federal employees who serve the American people with integrity. And, there's been a lot of conversation about him firing the BLS, the head of the BLS, and like a lot of historical analogies being made.
Right. I know, like when I do my budget and I'm using the calculator and it gives me numbers I don't like, it's clearly the calculator's problem.
Right.
Obviously.
Yeah, I mean, I can't remember all of the examples, but there was like several examples going around on Twitter of like, oh, when things started going bad for this kind of autocratic regime, they fired the statisticians and things really got bad. Because when you fire the statisticians and you start getting worse data, then you're kind of flying blind economically, right? And so, somebody even pointed out, said about they talked about China. And how when there was somebody that said something like, when China says that their economy grew by 5.3%, economists don't typically ask, how did the Chinese economy grow by 5%? They ask, why did China say the economy grew by 5%? And now there's a lot of like propaganda around China and stuff like that, but there's probably something to that, right? And so you got to be concerned when stuff like this starts happening, and
right. It is a very hypocritical thing, where you can say, well, we don't really trust the numbers that the Chinese put out, but our numbers are fine, and except for when they are bad and they make us look bad, in which case, clearly the numbers are broken. The person who produced those numbers is biased. Give us better numbers. It's really insane. Yeah, it's kind of like getting high on your own supply. It's one thing to BS the American people, as reprehensible as that is, but to start operating on that BS as like your official data, it does not bode well.
Yeah, it's really concerning. And even some of the most hardcore Trump people, like just normal people, like not commentators, you have to recognize that, like, especially at this point, but I mean even there in the first administration to a certain extent, like Trump is not appointing for qualifications. He is appointing based on loyalty to him, right?
Right. Yeah.
And so,
yes men who he's seen on TV.
And so you have to be concerned about, like, what does this mean for the future of statistics coming from the government in this country when it's coming from Trump appointees? I mean, it's very concerning. Very concerning stuff. 844-899-TVLR is the phone number, 844-899-8857. If you'd like to call in, we would love to hear from you. And, I mean, just speaking anecdotally, I mean, I have been kind of confused about the job numbers over the last couple of months because for the last couple of months, for May and June, it seemed like the economy was still doing pretty well. And that just did not match like my my sense of things, like the people that I talk to, the building trade unions that I talk to, the business people that I talk to, the business news that I read, the investments or the lack thereof, projects being canceled or going forward, like the kind of story that the numbers were painting were like like it was disjointed from like how I was seeing the world, and so I mean, when that was happening, I was like, well, maybe I'm just not seeing something. But this does seem to match like the people that I know and the people that I talk to, our experience of the economy.
Yeah, I mean, we had someone in the comments who said that the job market's horrible. They said they know personally that 5 of their friends are looking for work for 8 months or longer and can't find it. They've got degrees and student loans, no housing, higher rent, higher food prices, etc. And that really tracks with, I think, what we're hearing out in the community. And you're right. I mean, we have our own silos that we're in. We're in North Alabama. We don't know what's happening everywhere, certainly. But just in, being in community with folks and talking to people, there's a lot of people out there who are struggling to find work. They're underemployed currently, or they're unemployed. Or, there are some people who did take buyouts, some federal workers who did that. And so now they're kind of in a transitional period. And you're right, there's a lot of projects that have been canceled. So, I'm anticipating some tough times for some of the construction industries. But, I mean, like I said earlier, we're not even into the cuts that we're going to face in healthcare, education, other aspects of our economy that are going to be a big deal, right? I mean, the state of Alabama, just to sustain its existing food stamps program, is going to have to cough up hundreds of millions of dollars of extra revenue that it doesn't have.
Right.
So where do we balance the budget there? Are we looking at cuts to essential programs? Are we looking at layoffs of state workers? And, the cuts to Medicaid and healthcare are going to be huge, right? There are so many people, as you pointed out, that are employed in these industries. It's really keeping a lot of local economies afloat. And, what happens if some of these rural hospitals close? Right? Yeah. What happens to that entire county, that entire region, when the rural hospitals close? So we're not even into the thick of it yet.
Yep.
You just saw a clip from the Valley Labor Report. We are live every Saturday morning from 9:30 a.m. till 12:30 p.m. And we pride ourselves on keeping all of our content free to everybody so that we can talk to as many working folks as possible. If you support the work that we're doing, you think that it's important, you think that it's good, then consider making a monthly contribution to the project, and you can do that on our website, tvlr.fm.
Which side are you on?